Hello everyone. We're again visiting family in the Azorian Islands, and as we all know, the first symptom of being the crazy orchid lady is that family starts asking for help with their orchids. So we have here a few that I was asked to tend to with different degrees of urgency. So I thought I might as well bring you along. Maybe it will be a fun repot. And if you are a beginner with like a Phalaenopsis or two you've kept in the original pot and substrate for years now, we have some of those here too. So you can see what to expect when you repot yours for the first time. I apologize if the video doesn't turn out great quality-wise. We are outside to have better lighting, so you'll probably hear wind in the trees, birds, or even some very cute but a bit disruptive dogs. The lighting might also be constantly changing, because the weather here can be very unpredictable. We've actually been interrupted by rain twice already. Before we get started, I would like to remind you to subscribe to our channel. We try to make new orchid and plant videos every week. And if you're already subscribed, we now have a super thanks option active in the channel, where you can support us further. So let's get the first obvious thing out of the way. I've clearly arrived way too late for this plant. And it was a little bit my fault, because I've been here for over a month now, and I saw it starting to not look great, but I was, for very different reasons, kind of putting off these repots. And by the time I picked this one up, it was very clear that it was starting to suffer from crown rot. And this has happened to my own orchids several times. Unfortunately, you just need a little bit of moisture to get into the crown and it can start rotting. It's insanely common in Phalaenopsis. If it ever happens to you, don't beat yourself up. But, you should still be careful to avoid at any cost to drop water in the center of a Phalaenopsis. And with mine, what I usually do is remove all the rot, dump a bunch of cinnamon in there to try and contain the fungal infection, and hopefully there's still enough structure in the orchid that it will sprout a keiki. I actually just did that with one of mine, and if it does work, I will make a video about it. If it doesn't, you'll see her in the in memoriam video we try to do every year. But this one, from what I can tell, is completely rotten all the way down. I don't think there's any way to salvage this orchid, so unfortunately, I think this one is completely lost and I'll have to tell its owner. Next, we're going to deal with what I think is the most urgent case of all of these. This orchid has been in this pot since it was bought, and I'm pretty sure the owner has had it for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, I don't know, it's around that. And it bloomed consistently every year until last year it all of a sudden stopped blooming. I think it obviously needs some sort of intervention. If we look inside the pot, the roots are all mushy. It has one live root that's coming out of the bottom, but most of them I don't think are salvageable. It does have a bunch of air roots. So I think, depending on what we find inside the pot, we might have to chop off most of the root ball, because it's also doing that thing that Phalaenopsis do when they're not repotted for a while, which is it has this raised stem from all the old leaves that fell throughout the years, and now new roots are going to have a hard time finding their way into the medium. And in these cases, sometimes I'm really ruthless and I just chop off pretty much half of the plant and hope the air roots can sustain it. Since this is not my orchid technically. We'll see. We'll see what we find inside the pot. Since we're doing this a bit guerrilla style, instead of my usual trays, we have a paper bag. Even the stick is completely rotten. Oh. Even this fruit that was kind of healthy is broken. Oh well. I could see through the transparent nursery pot that is also brittle and falling apart already, that it has some white stuff inside. Oh boy, but the amount of mold inside this and the smell. See, this is why I always tell beginners to bite the bullet and just repot their orchids. Because even if you don't know what you're doing, it's better than leaving them in media that's not suitable or media that is completely rotting and acidified for years. Because this one, it was a gift. The person kept it for years and it flowered amazingly, so they didn't think they had to do anything. And it's only when it started having problems that they thought, well, maybe there's something that needs to be done. And they did come to me and ask me to do something, and I said, well, it probably just needs a repot. But then I didn't come home for like 2 years, 2.5 years. And this poor plant, partially from my fault, sat in really, really acidified media. You can see it still has that cocoa wire plug that nurseries used. That was a little plastic white air pot that is now so brittle it just falls apart. And this is something that happens a lot with Phalaenopsis, which you're always left with, what do I do? Because this root, it has all the stages. It's a healthy air root up here, then it becomes a dried up air root, then it has a bit of rot, but then the tip is still hard. And in my experience, there's no point in saving these. They're just going to bring further infection into the plant. So what I will do is cut it right up here and leave it just as an air root. Well, since I have the scissors, I might as well also get rid of this flower spike. Because this plant was given to me to take care of by Christmas, but then it was starting to flower. And I also didn't want to repot it in December, so I told the owner to just enjoy the flowers and then I'd do it in the summer. And the plant was so not doing well that it aborted most of the buds. The other problem of doing this in an improvised setting is that I don't have proper scissors. Again, if this was my own orchid, I would just not bother and just cut it right here. Since I'm always afraid of killing other people's orchids, and I know this is a very cherished plant, so I'm going to be extra careful and go root by root. This whole section here I don't think has any roots that are alive. So we could cut it right here, but not with these scissors. I think I'll have to be right back. So we're back with bigger scissors that I hope do something. Otherwise I might have to go in the garage and find garden shears, which will probably be rusty, because the problem of being in a really, really high humidity place is that everything rusts. So hopefully these scissors will do the trick. Oh. But they will not. we're back with the really rusty garden shears, because like I said, everything rusts here. So let's pick where we want it to cut. Okay, this is not working. And we're gonna have to go for plan C. Option 4 at this time. Swiss Army knife. And they said this was going to be guerrilla style. I guess I really meant it. Nope, this isn't working either. Attempt number 5, a kitchen knife. Nope, carving turkeys, carving Phalaenopsis. I think this mostly broke off. And the center is like completely like really wooden but really hard. Oh, this is the first time I've seen anything like this, so whether that's interesting for a video, I don't know, but it's the first time I've seen it, so. Now I'm gonna try and remove all these dried up bits. These roots have some live parts, but the end is kind of rotten. And this one even stole some of the finish of the decopot that it was in. So I'm just gonna trim it, because I'm starting to be afraid that there won't be many structures left for this orchid. And I don't like to have it only depend on the air roots, because if I put them in the pot, there's always a 50-50 chance that they're gonna end up rotting because of the shift. And I don't think I've ever filmed the repot of one of these big complex hybrid Phalaenopsis on my channel, because I always thought it would be like kind of boring. And then this one being not mine and having been left in the pot for a long time, I thought it would be different and interesting. And I thought maybe it would be useful for some beginners. And of course, it had to be just my luck that it would turn into one of the messiest repots I remember having, especially for not having proper tools. I don't think I'm ever taking my fancy garden shears for granted. I think I broke this root. I usually really try to remove all of these dried up sheaths, ends of leaves, whatever you want to call them. But like the stem, these seem completely petrified. They are so hard, usually kind of papery and just peel off. But these ones, it's actually hurting my fingers to try and get them off. Here you have an example of another conundrum root, as I like to call them, because it's an air root. Then it turns into a dried up root, and then it turns into a green functioning root. And these ones, considering the tips are green, and other than this part being a bit desiccated, there's nothing indicating that these roots aren't supplying the plant with water. I usually just leave them on. But if you have a different theory, just let me know. So I think I've cleaned everything I can clean here in a way that I can keep my sanity because I don't have the proper tools. I didn't think I would even miss my tweezers. But if we look at what we're left with, we actually have a few decent roots. And hopefully I'll be able to plant it deeper in the pot so that these air roots can keep growing and adapting into normal roots in the medium. Now we're going to try and put it in one of these pots, because one of the reasons it took me so long to pick up these plants, even though I've been here for quite a while, is that I got into my head that I would find orchid supplies in a small island with 60,000 people. Even though I was smart enough to bring some orchidaceae bark, because I didn't think I would find any quality bark here, I wouldn't have been able to find any bark here. And I couldn't find sphagnum, and I couldn't find orchid pots. The most that I got was this really nice lady at a garden center who gave me the old pots of orchids that they had for sale and had died. So that's what I have. Old nursery pots that I washed really well. They always say that plastic will last 500 years and it will never decompose. And I have no doubt in my mind that that's true environmentally. But then it becomes really frustrating when the plastic you get for your own use, that you expect to last for years and years, to last only 3 or 4. So let's see how this will fit. See, this one root here is going to be the headache because it's really stiff and it was formed for the old pot. And now that I want to bury the plant deeper, I would need it to not be this long. Let's just see what happens if I just use the 12 method, as I like to call it, where you put the orchid in and you start rotating and try to get the roots to just fall in place by themselves, and that's clearly not working for this one. Another thing I sometimes do is, outside of the pot, try to tuck them into a little ball in my hand so that they go into the pot already kind of in a position where they fit. Nope. This root just makes them all spring back. Okay. That and the root is already broken, so considering I don't have bigger pots, I'm going to be a bit ruthless. Get it? Ruthless. Okay, so I'm not being able to fit these roots into the pot. I've already broken a couple of them because of that. So I think I'm going to try and soak the roots again, see if they become a little bit more flexible, and then try to fit them into these pots again. But what I'm starting to think is I don't think I'm going to do any other orchid other than this one today. So let's see if after a bit of soaking, the roots are a little bit more friendly. Yeah, I think this is as far as I'm going to be able to force these roots. I don't even want to mess with them anymore in case they start breaking again. This orchid has a lot of weird things. The roots seem alive, but they're really brittle. The really, really petrified stem, I don't know. It is a curious case. Maybe not the best example on how to deal with an orchid for the first time, for your first repot, but definitely a weird case. And this part is always the easiest, especially when you don't have a very large root system. You just put the bark in and it'll fall in all the gaps. And there you go. You couldn't even tell that this was such a problem to repot. One thing I did remember to bring was slow release fertilizer. This is the one that's easier to find in our country, so even though I don't use it as much for my own orchids, I always put it in the pots of orchids that I'm taking care for someone else. Because if you're a beginner or if you're not that into plant care, it's much easier to just tell them to use tap water and the fertilization just being done through these little beads. I never know how much to use for this because the only instructions it gives you is to use 2 to 3 grams per liter on Phalaenopsis and 3 to 4 grams per liter on a Cymbidium. Because, you know, in my country I always joke that people say there's 2 types of orchids, inside orchids and outside orchids. And by that they mean inside orchids are Phalaenopsis and outside orchids are Cymbidiums. And that's the only orchids people know about pretty much. So this is definitely done for the Portuguese market. If I remember correctly, I usually calculate like 10 little beads should be enough. And there we are. I'm pretty sure this is going to be the only repot I'm going to get done today. But I'm still going to go through all the other ones to make sure that there's nothing that needs immediate attention. If not, I'll redo it when I come back in December or in the spring. And that's it for this really chaotic repot. I hope you still enjoyed the video, even though it didn't turn out to be what we initially thought of. Although that is starting to be the norm with a lot of our videos. So if you enjoyed it, don't forget to leave it a like. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel, don't forget to do so. If you didn't enjoy the video, we promise you we have better videos in our catalog, so you can go check it out. We try to post a new video every week, so we'll see you next week. Goodbye.